Hey, what's up guys? Today's video is very different from the other ones I've done so far. Maybe this is comparable to the game reviews that I do for specific people in Overwatch to help them climb in competitive and improve, but this one is more of a general video about basics. Now, I know that the battlegrounds in World of Warcraft have been around for a long time, and I mean long time, especially the classic ones like Warsong Gulch for Capture the Flag and Arathi Basin as somewhat of a King of the Hill or Conquest mode. The thing about my video is that it's probably very different from most of the guides out there because of the fact that this one is very basic, for beginners, from someone who has been spending more time at lower rating than higher rating. I do have the experience at 2000 or higher for rated battlegrounds, but ever since I've joined the Shadowlands, I've had such a hard time finding groups and therefore need a lot more time to get back to 2000 or higher. Over the years, obviously a lot has changed, but the basics of certain game modes haven't. A lot of the other guides out there use abbreviations of abilities or spells or other things that most people who are rather new to the game would not understand, and I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. So let's start with one of the classics, Arathi Basin. This is the resource-controlled battleground where you need to get 1500 resources before the enemy team does. You gain resource points by controlling any of the 5 bases on the map: the farm, the blacksmith, lumber mill, gold mine and stables. The more nodes you capture, the more points you get. Every 2 seconds you get a tick of resources depending on how many bases you currently control. Here's a list of how many points you get. Logically, it's very difficult to get all 5 bases and defend them until you win, so what people typically try to go for is to capture and hold 3 bases. How do you capture the bases? You need one person to click on the flag at the base for 6 seconds. Then there will be a timer of 1 minute before you capture it for your team and start gaining resources. If you die, you respawn at one of the graveyards of the bases that you own. If you own none of them, then you resurrect at the main graveyard. One thing that is also very useful to know is the fact that you can run to your corpse if the enemy hasn't looted it, in order to resurrect right there to interrupt them again, so you can defend your base in your favor until your team can send more people to help out. The base timer for you to resurrect at the graveyard is 25 seconds. It may be different in random unrated battlegrounds. In random battlegrounds, you have 15 people fighting against 15. But in rated battlegrounds, you queue up as 10 versus 10. In most groups that you will join, people will aim for farm, lumber mill and blacksmith if you're on a horde side, because you need at least 3 bases to win, and they're usually the easiest to defend, or alternatively, stables, lumber mill and blacksmith if you're on alliance's side. Most teams, if they have a rogue, because of stealth, they normally send that one person to the gold mine and pick off the enemy person that is most likely going there. Due to their abilities like Zap or Blind or even Smoke Bomb, it is fairly easy against most other classes to capture the base without actually fighting the enemy. As long as you manage to deal damage to the person trying to capture it for 6 seconds, it will interrupt them. Damage over time effects do not count, only the initial damage. So let's say a warlock is casting Immolate on somebody. The first part of the ability will stop the capture, but the burn damage over time effect will not stop them. Oftentimes it comes down to gear difference and better team compositions, whether you're gonna win the teamfights or not. Normally, people at lower rating do not want to communicate over voice chat and only type in chat, which can oftentimes actually work, because this game isn't that fast-paced. People will be able to upgrade their PvP gear depending on the rating they achieved, with 1400 being combatant, which lets you upgrade your gear to item level 207, with the unranked version of item level 200. Then once you reach 1600 called Challenger, you can upgrade it to item level 213. And with 1800 called Rival, another upgrade to 220. And the final upgrade at this point for the first PvP season of Shadowlands being Duelist at item level 226. A lot of random groups will also ask you to have PvP gear, mostly Versatility, so you wouldn't get blown up in the game. Versatility is a secondary attribute that increases your damage and healing done and also decreases your damage taken. Unfortunately, if you're just starting off, your gear is most likely going to be leveling gear, PvE gear from heroics or mythics, or honor gear that you've obtained in random battlegrounds up to item level 197, or perhaps the unranked version with slowly obtained conquest points at item level 200. Sadly, there are so many boosters out there as well who have high gear but help low geared and low ranked people to climb, same with arena games. You can only hope to find a group to play with, maybe get lucky that the enemy is doing about the same, with low gear, and try to get some honor or conquest points to get upgrades. Don't forget about the weekly quest that you can pick up, that will help you gain a bunch of conquest points as well, if it happens to be about earning honor in random or rated battlegrounds. So, going back to Arathi Basin, typically you'll have 1 tank, 3 healers and 6 damage dealers in your group. There are a lot of tactics and strategies that people can play, but this is pretty much the standard setup. You would want to have a decent variety of classes, with boomkin druids being strong, having a rogue to possibly steal a base, with warlocks and their utility of portals, health stones and damage over time effects, mages to provide food and range burst damage, warriors and paladins seem to be in a really good position as well at the moment, and disciplined priests being strong in the healer setup. Those are just a bunch of examples. Pretty much everything is viable, especially at lower ranks. I don't see the point in trying to explain how very high-rated people do things, because the problem is getting to that point in the first place. You can't play like the top 1% of the players if you're at the bottom of the ranks, and things are always a little different in each bracket. Most of the time, your team will suggest to send the tank defending farm if you're on Horde, or stables if you're Alliance, because that's the first base that you will reach from the starting point, and they should be able to survive a long time with a lot of their utility and PvP trinket to avoid being crowd controlled, CC, as I've been mentioning before about, for example, rogues being able to zap and blind you. Both of those abilities last long enough to capture the flag, if you have nothing to get out of it. Lumber Mill will have most people attacking it due to the base being on high ground, and after the teamfight is over, a lot of classes have abilities to get down to the blacksmith faster with Slowfall, Levitate, or the Demon Hunter's passive ability to float down without taking fall damage due to their wings and so on. During the fight, if you have any knockback abilities like Typhoon, an explosive trap, or even mind control, you can win fights in your favor by outnumbering them. As far as I could see, one healer and one DPS will go to the blacksmith just to contest, everyone else will go to Lumber Mill, and depending on the teamfight, number of enemies and outcome of the fight itself, people can start rotating to other bases. After that, all you need to do is waste the enemy's time, while you hold 3 bases until you gather all the resources to 1500 points. Since the blacksmith is in the center of the map, it is a very vital node to capture because it is close to all the other nodes if you need to reinforce your defenses there. Now, why did I even start this video in the first place? Because I've been streaming and playing the game more often recently. I've been playing Arena, I've been doing random battlegrounds and also rated battlegrounds, and a lot of people seem to do such massive misplays that loses us the game in the end. I felt like I needed to get this off my chest, try something new for my channel and just have it right there. My friends also suggested to make this video. A lot of people are surprisingly new to the game and don't really know where to start. And fact is that there are a ton of videos out there with guides, but unfortunately most of them are by top players who don't even know how it is to not have a set group to help them out. The constant struggles of trying to find people to play with, and then they usually leave after one game when it's not going well. This is actually my position right now. I'm much more casual nowadays. I used to be at like the top 10% in rated battlegrounds, but I was also playing the game a lot more and actually had a team to play with. I took a long break from the game. I've been in and out with each expansion and only got into Shadowlands about like 2 months ago or something, so I have to start at the bottom like most people. I think most of the things that upset me about this battleground specifically was the fact that when we only have 2 bases, which means we're gonna lose long term, and if the team is struggling to get a 3rd base, they oftentimes go all the way to the stables from farm, which is not only taking long to get there, but also they can see you coming from miles away, and they also have the spawn advantage right at the graveyard next to it, if you didn't already capture the base. Or even when you already have it, their main graveyard is still closer than yours. The longer the fight keeps going, the harder it gets to actually get away, not waste more time and capture something else. You definitely need a lot of patience for this. Try to get into any group at this point. Your matchmaking rating will drop with each loss, so hopefully at some point the games are gonna be a bit easier. It is fairly easy to get to 1000 rating, since you usually get more points than you lose. It's even better if people actually decide to use voice comms to call out things, and if you have a decent leader or target caller to try and focus on something specific. And I also highly recommend getting these add-ons to help you with vital information about Battlegrounds. Number 1 being Battleground Enemies. This is an add-on that shows every enemy in a frame, updating in real time to show how much health they have, if they are still respawning, and simply to target them, including the fact that it shows a number next to their name to see how many of your own teammates have targeted them, so it makes it easier for you to figure out who's being focused. You can also see their specialization and everything necessary. The second add-on I would recommend is Reporter or Reporter, I don't know how you say that one. This is a simple, customizable map overview for each battleground showing capture timers, the state of each node, and flag respawn timers. You can have a quick look at the map to find out where your team is located, you have buttons to report incoming targets, or announcing that you will move to a certain base, etc. There's also an estimated timer at your objective to show how much longer it will take to win or lose, so you can determine whether or not you need to capture an additional base. There are a bunch of other ones that a lot of people use, like Gladiator Losa or whatever it's called, to announce ability usage, but for beginners I think that's a little bit too much information that isn't as important in BGs as it is in Arena. And here in this footage from one of my recent streams I can show you some examples as to what you shouldn't be doing if you would pay attention to the map. People are fighting at bases being really far away, but it takes too many people and time to keep it at the cost of not getting another base. In the end, we lose it despite having better gear, because of bad decision making. So we've already mentioned the basics of this battleground. Of course it requires you to know your class, your abilities and the knowledge of how to deal with enemies, but that simply comes with experience. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. The game can be quite complex, especially when a bunch of things have changed over the years, but all in all, everyone has to start somewhere. If you have specific questions for marksmen or beast mastery hunters, or even discipline priests, you can ask me on my stream or ask in the comments below. General battleground things can always be discussed on my stream if you want to. I will not be covering other battlegrounds here because they will have their own video if I feel like taking care of those, and there are always annoying examples in each of the battlegrounds that I've mentioned a bunch of times on my streams because they have been happening for many years. I feel like there's so much to talk about, but I don't want this to be an hour-long video, and at this point I'm not sure where to start or stop, so this video turned out to be extremely basic. In general, giving people information in the form of callouts, as most people call it, will get you quite far. If you can react to enemies attacking a base, call it out as soon as possible, because it is usually easier to defend than it is to attack. If your team is responsive, they will send people to come to the base that you were defending and keep stopping them from capping the flag until it is safe. The other way around, if you're not defending, you should be listening out for those kind of callouts from other people, so you can react and play accordingly. Again, if you still own the base, you will have your respawn closer than them, you can walk to your corpse to resurrect and keep interrupting the enemy and stopping them from getting your flag at the base. Keep the 6-second assault time in mind. In general, don't ever leave a base alone, because it is easy to lose it with no one knowing about it and much harder to get it back if they reinforce the base. Preferably, you do not want to have one of your healers defending, since you only have 3 of them and they are much more useful helping elsewhere with other teammates, but it's still better than leaving a base by itself. Call out for someone else to defend it so you can swap with another person. Usually, tanks, because of their survivability, will be used to defend, and hunters are generally quite decent for that too, because of their pet. If you get CC'd, you can still control your pet to have it interrupt them, and you can also put traps down at the flag beforehand. Other than that, classes with stealth, like druids and rogues, are good for this as well, due to them being undetected until the enemy touches the flag. Other than that, in teamfights it's so important to focus the same target because healing and survivability is quite strong, which means you will most likely not be able to outdamage someone by yourself. That's why I mentioned the add-on, where you can see how many people have the same target as their focus. If you have any CC, crowd control like Fear, Cyclone or Polymorph, or interrupts like Kick, Countershot or Silence or anything similar, remember to use those to stop the enemy healers from keeping their teammates alive, to give your team the chance to burst the target down. Other than that, learning how to deal with each class that is focusing you is important, so you know when you need to use one of your own defensive cooldowns like Ice Block, Aspect of the Turtle or Divine Shield. If you know that the enemy is using a bunch of hard-hitting abilities that will most likely kill you, you want to avoid it by using a defensive ability. You need to figure out when a teamfight is lost and your presence might be more useful elsewhere, because you will eventually run out of time if you waste it somewhere for too long. Now, unfortunately, a lot of teams only invite you if you have high experience and can prove that you've been at a high rating before, or if you have amazing gear already. Both of those are kind of hard to achieve, considering new people having no way of climbing if they're not taken into a group in the first place. The best thing you can do is to do regular battlegrounds and find those groups that just try to get honor and some conquest points so you can upgrade your vault and possibly get a bunch of new gear. Once your item level is maybe high enough, you'll have better chances. I know that this video is probably not going to reach any relevant people, and by relevant I mean people who are actually new to the game, find their way to my video and find it helpful. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate that you are watching and listening to this video no matter who you are. I'm not saying that you're irrelevant as a person or that I don't care about you, I just know that there aren't many people who are actually sub to me, who are new to the game and want to learn more about PvP. With that being said, thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. I honestly didn't know what I wanted to upload this week, but now I've recorded this much, so might as well go through with it. You can also find me on Twitch around 2 to 6 PM CEST for any questions, or you can go to my schedule linked in the description to find the times in your time zone. Bye 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 bye.